Hello there, my name is Captain Jeff. I'm in my hotel room, my mobile studio, I like to say, and I'm the host of the Airline Pilot Guy Show, which you're watching right now. It is a podcast, mostly an audio podcast, but I do make this video version available on YouTube if you prefer watching me while I'm recording the show. And I'm a captain for a major U.S. legacy carrier, and the show is about news and aviation with a slant toward airline aviation, of course, and answering people's questions, like perhaps yours. So if you want to learn more about the Airline Pilot Guy Show, head over to airlinepilotguy.com. There you'll find ways to listen to the audio podcast. You can subscribe by going over to iTunes or your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you are interested in anything that I talk about on today's show, they should be available on the show notes for today's episode, again, at airlinepilotguy.com. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Now let me make sure my audio recorder is on. It is. And the show, by the way, that you're watching right now is largely the same as the audio-only version. It's just that I won't do a lot of editing of the video. There might be times where I pause or maybe redo something, and in the audio version, that'll all be nice and cleaned up. In this version you're watching right now is kind of the behind-the-scenes kind of raw cut, so to speak. But don't worry, I won't be taking off my clothes in my hotel room. Not in front of you, at least. We don't know each other that well. Okay, the recorder's on, and let me check my sound levels here with my soundboard.
Flight 209, you're clear for takeoff.
Roger.
That sounds okay. All right, let's do this. Airline Pilot Guy, episode 148.
Flight 209, you're clear for takeoff.
Roger.
LA, good morning. 123.9.
Roger. Request connected.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 744 in the Hilton Hotel in downtown Tampa, Florida. In this episode, anniversaries, side sticks, drones, more bad passenger behavior, and much, much more, including your great feedback. So, get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on, Flight 148 is ready for pushback. And that is my cheesy intro music, as somebody said somewhere. And my response was, I like my cheesy intro music. Thank you very much. And if you want to figure out what that is, again, in the show notes, you can find information about music and intro stuff that I play for the show, etc., etc. And also in today's show, as last week's episode, I will intersperse some little bumper music here and there, again with my favorite jazz band, the Airmen of Note, and the U.S. Air Force Airmen of Note. Okay, so let's get on with it. Now, first thing I need to do is make amends because Kaysen, is that right? Kaysen? Make sure. Yes, Kaysen Rumpf in Minneapolis. I was walking through the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport about a week and a half ago, before my last episode. And I was walking along some of the shops in there. I mean, it's a really nice airport. It's almost like being in a shopping mall there. And somebody tapped on my shoulder as I was walking along, and I turned around and I saw this ground worker, an Acme Ground Services employee, and he said, "Captain Jeff?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Hi, my name is Kaysen, and I listened to your show, and I saw that you had tweeted that you were here, and I don't know how he found me, but he found me. I guess he knew where to look, at all the shops or where all the food was. So anyway, we talked for a little bit, and then he said, well, I got to go, and I said, well, I got to go too. So, and I said to him, Kason, I'll mention you or meeting you on the next show. Well, I recorded the next show, and I forgot to mention your name, Kason, so I'm sorry about that. So, again, Kason Rumpf, a good German name in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, hello, Kason. And as I mentioned in the very beginning of the show, we're going to be talking about some anniversaries. Now, the first anniversary that I'll talk about is not really that significant. It's a personal thing, a personal anniversary that I have, and it occurred this week on the 15th. I'm recording this on the 18th right now, and the 15th was my 26th anniversary from being hired by Acme Airlines. So December 15th, 1988 is when I started training. My class started, and as I said, 26 years, so yay. So I celebrated that. Really, a couple of people congratulated me regarding that anniversary, but most people didn't know it. Nobody in my family had any idea. Oh well. But it was kind of nice for me to remember that day when I started training at Acme so many years ago. So I celebrated that this week. And the other anniversary, which is yesterday, which is a very much more important anniversary than my hiring date anniversary, and that is because without this anniversary, chances are I may not be doing what I'm doing right now for a living, and that is flying. Yes, yesterday was the 111th anniversary. 111 years ago yesterday, two brothers, Orville and Wilbur Wright, made the first controlled, powered, and sustained heavier-than-air human flight. And they did that in North Carolina, what was it called, Kill Devil Hills, on the Outer Banks, I believe, or somewhere over there, on the coastal North Carolina area. I don't know the exact term or geographic location. I should. I'm sorry, I don't. But Kill Devil Hills, I believe. I'll have a link, by the way. Tim Van Ram sent me a couple of really good links regarding this important event in aviation history, and I'll include those in the show notes. But reading a little bit from the one of those links, which is a Wikipedia citation, although not the first to build and fly experimental aircraft, the Wright brothers were the first to invent aircraft controls that made fixed-wing powered flight possible. The brothers' fundamental breakthrough was their invention of three-axis control, which enabled the pilot to steer the aircraft effectively and to maintain its equilibrium. This method became and remains standard on fixed-wing aircraft of all kinds. From the beginning of their aeronautical work, the Wright brothers focused on developing a reliable method of pilot control as the key to solving the, quote, flying problem. This approach differed significantly from other experimenters of the time who put more emphasis on developing powerful engines. Using a small home-built wind tunnel, the Wrights also collected more accurate data than ever before, enabling them to design and build wings and propellers that were much more efficient than before. Their first U.S. patent, 821,393, did not claim invention of a flying machine, but rather the invention of a system of aerodynamic control that manipulated a flying machine's surfaces. Again, if you want to read more about, and it's a very, very good, well-researched article, by the way, in Wikipedia, check out that link right here, right below, in the show notes. Okay, so that, I believe, are the only two anniversaries that I was going to talk about today. So you know what that means. It's time now for the Java Jive, the Ink Spots, recorded in 1940.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee,
I love tea. I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
boy.
All right, as the ink spots serenade us, let's talk about the Coffee Fund. The Coffee Fund, if you want to find out more information about it, is at airlinepilotguy.com/coffee, and it's basically a fund to help me offset some of the costs of doing this show, and also providing me with money to buy my favorite caffeine delivery system, which is coffee. And since the last show, we have Brent, Shane, Magnus, Stuart, Rana, Billy, Project 64. I'm not sure who the individual was that donated from Project 64, but they are in Melbourne, Australia. And also we have from Patreon, Stephen, Tyler, and Brendan. So a couple different ways you can participate in the donation toward the coffee fund. And again, just a reminder, I know it's getting toward the end of the year here, and many of you are thinking about taxes and such, and unfortunately, any donation made to the coffee fund is not tax deductible because although many people do consider me a charity case, it is not a 501c3 charity. So, sorry. But thank you to all of you who have recently donated and have in the past, and maybe even some of you considering it. So, again, airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. The news. Airline Pilot Guy. News and commentary. Good day. Oh, I forgot to mention I'm on a 4-day trip and started out on Tuesday. It is now Thursday, and we're on day 3. The first day was the longest day. Ended up starting out early, flying, I don't know, it was like a 12-hour day, it seemed. We got to almost 12 hours. We ended up going to Boston and back to, LaGuardia, New York, and back to Atlanta, and then up to Providence, Rhode Island. And had a nice layover there in Providence, short, unfortunately. And then left early the next morning from Providence through Detroit, and then Detroit, Grand Rapids. I was in Grand Rapids yesterday, and I did most of the prep work for today's show there, and also got together with my first officer and one of the flight attendants, John, and we went over to Founders Brewing Company, or brewery, Founders Brewery. Many of you who know good craft beer will recognize the Founders name. And it was really cold. It was snowing lightly, and of course, none of us really had appropriate winter wear with us packed up. So we took a cab over. Although on the way back, we didn't need a cab because I guess that wonderful Founders beer that we were drinking kind of helped insulate us. Maybe we just didn't feel as much. But one of the really cool things that happened at Founders, and we couldn't figure out why. It was like a Wednesday. It's Grand Rapids. It's Wednesday. It's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the place is packed. I mean, we couldn't actually find a place to sit down. We had to stand up, and it wasn't even really a table that we were. It was like a podium thing that we were kind of leaning up against, and we were putting our beers on and our sandwich plates. And but we really were just kind of scratching our heads. Why is this place so packed today? Then all of a sudden they started playing the Canadian national anthem, and I'm trying to think, well, I know we're pretty far north here in the United States, but why are we playing the Canadian national anthem? And this guy, one of the workers there, comes out with this big this big Canadian flag, and he's walking through the brewery, and people are cheering. And then I noticed all these people, workers there, had these platters filled with this really good-looking dark beer in a brandy glass, like a brandy snifter, and handing them out to people. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And so I asked a couple that was close to us. I said, I'm not getting this. What's going on? I go, oh, well, you didn't know? That's not why you're here? And I said, no. And they said, well, like once a year they make this special beer called, let's see, it's something, Canadian Breakfast Stout, CBS. And they have a normal breakfast stout, which is very good, by the way. And it's a little touch of sweetness, really full-bodied, really great toasted coffee, chocolate malts, etc. in this thing. And I guess they take that basic recipe and then they put it in, or age it in, maple syrup barrels or something. I think they must add some maple syrup to it as well. But it has this very... we ended up... we were really ready to leave at that point, but then when we saw all this going on, all this commotion, we thought, hey, maybe we should try to snag one of these beers. And so we shared one between the three of us, and it had a very strong bourbon kind of flavor, a sweet maple sweetness, bourbon, and combined with that oatmeal stout, breakfast stout flavor. It was just a wonderful beer. Definitely a sipping beer. Nothing that you would want to drink more than one or two of. Otherwise, you probably would not be able to walk. Very high alcohol. But it was great. And it was just so much fun just being there for that kegging, that tapping of this keg. And I don't know how long it will last, but there was a line of 75 to 100 people outside, and it was cold outside, waiting to get in to get a snifter of this beer. So I consider myself very lucky that I was there when that happened. So just thought I'd share that with you. So today, left this morning from Grand Rapids to Detroit, and then Detroit down here to Tampa. So that is day 3. Tomorrow we go from here to Atlanta in the morning, and then fly to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then I think we deadhead home on the last flight, or the last leg of our trip from Charlotte to Atlanta. We get home into Atlanta about midday. So good trip so far. Weather's been relatively good. A little rain here and there, and a little snow here and there, de-icing here and there, which is a lot of fun. But okay, let's move on with the news. Airbus. Now, I've seen a couple. You probably have heard this as well in the news. That there was some news earlier in the week about Airbus questioning whether or not they were going to continue to build the A380 super jumbo jet. And then almost right after I read that article, I read something else saying that, oh no, we're going to continue to build it, and we're looking into a neo version, which in Airbus parlance, or in nomenclature, it stands for new engine option, which means that they're looking at working with Rolls-Royce and other manufacturers to come up with a more fuel-efficient engine to be mounted on the Airbus A380. I guess they were looking at their order book for extended orders out into the future, and so far for 2018, I don't think they have any orders at all. So that's why a lot of people were speculating that this might be a dead product, and perhaps a product that was before its time or too late for its time or something. I don't know. But so a couple different articles I was reading about whether or not they were going to scrap the thing altogether, or if they were going to build the A380 Neo and possibly the A380 Stretch. Earlier this year, Airbus admitted it was looking at a next-generation Airbus A380 Neo based on lobbying for the proposed aircraft by Emirates, which is its largest A380 customer. I think they have like 140 A380s ordered, and I think that they would convert some of those, or a lot of those orders, to the Neo version. And they're already floating a revamped A380 design called the A380-900, with as many as 22% more seats, including an optional 11 seats across in economy. A supersized A380 could carry close to 1,000 passengers. Wow. Can you imagine that? Known as the A380-900, it's the big brother to the original A380-800, which is what is and already exists on the drawing board, but was shelved in May 2010 due to a soft demand. But they're, again, exploring that now, and that would extend the thing. Let's see, I guess the 900 would be 79.4 meters from tip to tail, and 6.4 meters the length of a shipping container, more than today's A380. So you can do the math to figure out how many feet that is. Anyway, so again, kind of mixed messages there. Is the A380 going to be something that's going to be, continued to be built into the future, or will this become another dead aviation product? Oh, that's enough of that. Let's see. This I saw somewhere in the Times of India. That's not where I found it. I found it online somewhere. But an Air India plane almost hit a UAV in Leh after ATC failure. This is probably and possibly the closest a close shave can get. An Air India aircraft operating the ultra-difficult Delhi-Leh sector recently was prevented from disaster as it was approaching to land in Leh by the sheer presence of mind shown by its pilots. Okay, so Leh is a place up in the Himalayas, and it's a very high-altitude airport. And from what I could determine based on a little bit of research here, getting into and out of that airport requires several special conditions, and it always happens in the early morning hours. And I think the last flight operating into or out of the airport is about midday, because after that time, there's something about mist comes in over the Himalayas and also the winds just become too squirrely to operate safely. And so they, I'll continue with this article. Communication failure at the air traffic control tower managed to trouble the aircraft twice during the day, and an unmanned aerial vehicle added to the problem on its second landing attempt. On the first approach, Air India's Airbus A380 flying as Flight 3449 experienced communication failure with the ATC tower managed by somebody at the defense airfield. In the case of a communication failure, green flares are fired to ask the aircraft approaching to land, or red flares are shot to communicate that landing permission has not been given. That day, the experienced pilots, and by the way, this is a special airport for specially trained pilots, for the first flight landed after seeing a green flare fired from the Leh Airport control tower. The aircraft landed safely and did a quick return to Delhi. Oh, okay. Then it was a second flight later in the day. The same pilots then flew the same aircraft back to Leh. The Leh Airport has a short window of flight operations that begins from 22 minutes after sunrise, by when shadows of nearby hills do not linger over the airfield, to just after noon, from when winds become so strong that aircraft movement is not possible. I guess I could have just read that instead of going into my own little thing earlier. Okay, on the second approach to Leh, once again there was a communication failure at the tower. This time no green flares were fired, and the aircraft did a go-around when it was just seconds away from touchdown. While climbing up after the aborted landing, the pilots were in for another shock. A UAV was in their go-around path. The aircraft barely missed this UAV by about 100 feet, say sources. Anyway, they came back around and they landed safely. Okay. And sticking with drones or UAVs, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, AOPA, is urging the FAA to take steps to address the safety risks of small recreational UAVs, including stipulating penalties for pilots who operate them recklessly. The association made the recommendation yesterday, which was last week, December 11th, In prepared comments at a House Aviation Subcommittee hearing on UAV operations, AOPA told the subcommittee that an increasing number of incidents involving recreational unmanned aerial systems pose a potential threat to aviation. It's clear that many of the people operating UASs have little or no knowledge of the rules under which other airspace users operate. AOPA wrote in its statement, "It is also clear from online videos that operators are flying near airports and in the clouds and in congested airspace." AOPA told lawmakers it wants the FAA to provide clear guidance and improve educational outreach for recreational UAV flyers while establishing penalties for reckless operations. Part of that effort should include guidance for pilots on how to file reports with the FAA on dangerous encounters with UAVs. Radio-controlled model aircraft have been around for decades. The difference and the challenge now is the proliferation of low-cost multi-rotor drone aircraft that take little or no training to operate and are often flown beyond line of sight using point-of-view systems, said George Perry, Air Safety Institute Senior Vice President. Technology moves fast, and government bureaucracies like the FAA do not. It's clear to anyone who has been following the rise of the drone that there are several safety concerns, and the FAA is struggling with how best to deal with those. Okay, so enough of drones. Don't want to drone on forever on that. Yeah, it wasn't that funny. Okay. The pilot's viewpoint. This is from Fred George in aviationweek.com. He writes, "Every time I belt into the left seat of an Eclipse 500 jet, I'm reminded that it's the only jet I've flown with active side sticks. That's because the left and right cockpit controls are mechanically linked to each other as well as to the flight control surfaces. If one pilot moves the side stick, the other pilot can see and feel those inputs being made to the flight controls. If the autopilot makes inputs to the flight control system, both side sticks also move to provide tactile and visual feedback. However, those essential situational awareness cues are missing from every fly-by-wire airplane I've flown with side stick controls, such as the Airbus A380, the Airbus A400M, Dassault Rafale, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, RAFEALE, the Falcon 7X, and the Embraer Legacy 500. That is about to change with the introduction of BAE Systems active inceptor side sticks aboard the Gulfstream 500 and 600, the first civil aircraft to use a technology that made its debut aboard the Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II. BAE's active inceptors have electrical servos that enable the cockpit controls to mimic the action of mechanically linked side sticks. Data flows from the controls to the fly-by-wire system and also from the digital flight controls back to the side sticks. Data from the flight control computers causes the side sticks to move together and also moves the side sticks as the autopilot makes inputs to the flight control system. We're taking a step forward in situational awareness, says Adam Taylor, BAE Systems Director for Advanced Inceptors. We also can build them with soft stops in force field to provide tactile cues for structural and aerodynamic limits. We can even equip them with stick shakers and pushers for stall barrier protection. And depending on the needs of the airframe manufacturer, they're capable of providing cue feel so that control input effort varies as a function of equivalent airspeed. Now, naysayers claim that with all these new functions, active side sticks will suffer much higher failure rates than passive side sticks. And Adam Taylor counters that the gear is designed for very long life with multiple redundancies. We give the sticks the intelligence to monitor their own performance, and you can feel if the stick is going out of calibration. And so he forecasts a mean time between unscheduled removal that will be basically on par with that of the passive side sticks. So, thank you, Fred, for writing this article in Aviation Week, and that's good. You know, one of the problems that many of us have with the side stick controllers is that the fact that you don't have any, any feedback, any no input. And when the autopilot's on, the thing doesn't move. When the other person is activating the side stick controller, there's no movement on your side stick controller. And again, many people would argue that that was one of the factors involved in the tragedy of Air France 447, that nobody knew that Bonin, the first officer sitting in the right seat, was holding that side stick controller full aft for most of that accident. And if they'd known that, they would have been able to most likely recover from or even prevent being in a stalled situation to begin with. But at least they may have recognized the deep aerodynamic stall, and they could have recovered from it if they had realized it early enough. Okay, so that was a kind of a cool article, I think. This is from Mark, and Mark, flight level 330. I'm not sure exactly. I'm sorry, Mark, I don't know your last name, or I don't at least have it written down here, but one of the many Marks that listen to the show and send feedback. The headline is "Flight Diverted After Passenger Reportedly Throws Hot Water at a Crew Member." Now you remember earlier this month, nut rage prompted the pilot of a Korean Air flight on the tarmac of New York's JFK Airport to turn back to the gate. Now, Hot Water Gate has forced a China-bound Thai Air Asia flight to return to Bangkok, angering not just the passengers on board, but also the Chinese government and the public. Shortly after Flight 9101 took off last Thursday evening from Bangkok for the eastern Chinese city of Nanjing, a male passenger asked a flight attendant for boiling water for his girlfriend's instant noodles. When told that they had to wait for the plane to reach cruising altitude, the young man reportedly dumped food in the aisle, stomped on it, and yelled at other passengers who tried to calm him down. He was allegedly still fuming as a flight attendant of the budget airline brought a cup of hot water and charged him 60 Thai baht, which is about $2 US, for it. Another argument ensued when he demanded Chinese currency for change as well as an official receipt. As the quarrel dragged on, the man's girlfriend threw hot water onto the back of a flight attendant, witnesses said. When the purser demanded that the woman apologize, the boyfriend exploded. There was a cell phone video taken by a fellow passenger and posted online. Anyway, it gets worse. There was a commotion. The captain finally says, "You know what? That's enough. This is endangering our flight, the safety of our flight crew." He decided to return the plane to Bangkok's secondary airport, and the Thai authorities reportedly questioned the couple along with two of their friends who were also involved in the incident and ordered them to pay the flight attendant 50,000 baht, which is $1,500. And so bad behavior continues. And speaking of the Korean nut rage controversy, you'll remember the daughter of the Korean Airlines or Korean Air CEO had a airplane that had just pushed off the gate at John F. Kennedy to return to the gate and had the purser removed because he didn't know the proper protocol for serving macadamia nuts. And it turns out that there was more to this, that when the purser, his name is Park, let's see, what's his full name? Park Chung-jin. When he returned to South Korea on a separate flight after being forced out from the first plane, 5 to 6 officials from Korean Air came to visit his home every day and asked him to give a false account to authorities of what happened. The officials asked him to tell investigators that the vice president, the daughter of the CEO, Cho, did not use abusive language and that he voluntarily got off the plane. Korean Air confirmed that Park was the senior flight attendant, or the head of the cabin crew, and the company declined to comment on the matter under investigation, but it's being investigated by the Transport Ministry in Korea. And looks like last Friday, in her first public appearance since the incident, A gloomy-faced Cho bowed and said, "I sincerely apologize. I'm sorry," before droves of journalists in an almost inaudible, trembling voice. She said she will meet the victimized crew member and apologize sincerely. And I think that she has resigned from her post as vice president at Korean Air. And when hours before she gave her apology, the chairman, Cho Yang-ho, also made a deep bow before journalists. He called his daughter's behavior foolish, and he said he regrets he didn't raise her better. He said, "It's my fault. As chairman and father, I ask for the public's generous forgiveness." That's pretty amazing, isn't it? I don't think you'd ever see that here in the United States, where the CEO of a company, if it were an American airline, and probably would be defending the child and the child's rude behavior. And this man basically said, "Look, it's my fault. I obviously didn't raise my daughter well enough to behave appropriately in this situation." And I just thought that was kind of a breath of fresh air. Okay, enough of that. I'd mentioned Bob Hoover in several previous episodes, and in fact, in one, I basically said that he was no longer with us. But yes, he is still with us. He is 92 years old, and in fact, was just recently awarded the NAA, the National Aeronautics Association, Wright Brothers Memorial Trophy. And after 70 years of achievements in aviation, the industry honored Robert A. Bob Hoover with its top award, described by Jimmy Doolittle, a past recipient of the trophy, as the greatest stick and rudder man who ever lived. Hoover has flown, tested, and even crashed more airplanes than most any other pilot who ever lived. And this occurred in Washington, D.C. at the Aero Club of Washington's 67th Annual Black Tie Wright Memorial Dinner to honor the latest Wright winner. They hold this each year on the Friday evening preceding the December 17th anniversary of the Wright brothers' first powered controlled flight in 1903. So he was up on stage, and David Hartman was the person who interviewed Bob Hoover, and I have a little audio that I think is worth playing. I have two clips here, and so if you'll bear with me, I think that there's some really good stuff in here. Again, this is Bob Hoover, who just won the Wright Brothers Memorial Trophy, being interviewed by David Hartman on stage here at this dinner just last Friday, and let's take a listen.
When Lindbergh flew the Atlantic, you were 5. How did that affect you?
Well, I was too young to really know what was going on, but I did hear about it later from my parents, and so I got interested in aviation a little bit then. I started building models, the routine from there, and you heard the rest of it, but I was motivated. The one thing I learned about it all was that don't take no for an answer. If you really want to do something, set your mind to it. And I've advocated this to young people as far back as I can remember. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. You learn how to do it, figure out a way to do it, and you are the only one that can make it happen. And you can go through a lot of disappointments in your young life, but don't give up if that's what you really wish to do.
Now, that is sage advice, and in fact, many people that listen to the show, and many of you who have listened to the show in the past, know that there are a lot of people who want to do this job, the job that I have, being a commercial airline pilot, or they want to be a military pilot, or they want to be a corporate pilot, or they want to be a pilot. And there are obstacles in the way of them attaining that goal. Some of them physical, some of them monetary, etc. And that piece of advice that Bob Hoover just gave is don't give up. Keep trying. If you want something badly enough, there is a way to make it happen. And I was so glad to hear him say that. And let's continue with some more sage advice from the great Bob Hoover.
You met Orville Wright. I'm not sure anybody in this room except you met Orville Wright. Or maybe none of the other recipients of the award have met Wright. But you've also met all the other and knew all the great aviators. Doolittle, Lindbergh, Cochrane, and on through, the astronauts of these days. Great aviators. What sets great aviators apart from good aviators?
I think the desire to excel. A lot of people have asked me questions like that, David, and I'm kind of hard pressed to respond other than to say that I never was trying to think of myself as wanting to be the best pilot or anything like that, and I never thought I was and still don't. But I'll tell you this, I got assignments that forced me to do things I didn't want to do. When I was aged to fly, I wanted to fly combat. And I didn't get to do combat as early as I wanted to. And I flew some missions in England in Spitfires before we got any airplanes there. But I was driving myself, and all through my learning curves, I was trying to convince myself that I could do better than I had done the last flight I made. And if I was disappointed about, as I mentioned in that little film on the roll, if I didn't like it, I had to keep doing it until I was challenging myself every flight to try and be as smooth as I could be, because abruptness was what made me airsick. And so I was trying to conquer it. And for those who will get a chance to see this film, if you haven't already seen it, you'll see me pouring iced tea while I'm upside down. Well, that's how smooth I wanted to convince myself I could fly. And I could take a whole airliner full of people and they'd never know they were upside down. They wouldn't spill a drop of their drink or miss their mouth.
Well, don't worry. If you're ever a passenger on any of my flights, I will not be doing the Bob Hoover barrel roll, pouring iced tea into a glass and not spilling a drop. But yeah, he was and is that good. And a really, what a great question by David Harp. What's the difference between a good aviator and a great aviator? And basically he was saying to always try to excel, to always get better. And that's the way I fly airplanes as well. I try to make that airplane, that flight, as smooth as I can, and next flight I try to make it even smoother. And I take a lot of pride in my craft. And it sounds to me like that is what he's saying. The difference between just your run-of-the-mill good aviator and a great aviator is that the great aviators are always trying to get better. And anyway, very inspiring interview. I'll have a link to this page with the video of this. And by the way, he looks great. He's 92 years old. He's speaking with such great clarity, clarity of mind, clearness of thought. I'm very impressed. And the film that he was talking about was a film that I had talked about on earlier shows, and it was a film by Kim First, Flying the Feathered Edge, the Bob Hoover Project. And it is now available on DVD. I'll have information or a link on how you can order the DVD. I just did. I believe that was yesterday when I ordered my DVD, and I think it's already on the way. I just received an email today. The film recounts Hoover's remarkable flying life and includes commentary by such well-known pilots as Harrison Ford, Dick and Bert Rutan, Carol Shelby, Gene Cernan, Clay Lacey, Sean D. Tucker, and Air Force Colonel Bud Day. And anyway, I had no idea. I guess I'm going to learn more about the great Bob Hoover, that he joined the Army Air Corps during World War II and became a fighter pilot in the National Guard, and he ended up flying overseas in England, a British Supermarine Spitfire, and then he was shot down over Germany and spent 16 months as a prisoner of war before escaping. And how did he escape? He stole a German Focke-Wulf 190, flying it to safety and freedom in the Netherlands. I had no idea. So I intend to learn more about Bob Hoover, and I'm looking forward to the movie, the DVD, Flying the Feathered Edge, the Bob Hoover Project. So I was thrilled to see that. And let's see, finally in the news section here, a long news section today, I apologize. This is from the Wall Street Journal, and John Ostrower and Andy Pastor. And the title of the article is Single Pilot Cockpit Idea Floated in NASA Study. A new study comes as industry faces potential pilot shortage and dramatic advances in automation. Facing potential shortages of airline pilots and dramatic advances in automation, industry and government researchers have begun the most serious look yet at the idea of enabling jetliners to be flown by a single pilot. All large commercial jets for passenger and cargo service worldwide now fly with at least 2 pilots in the cockpit. A new study by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and Rockwell Collins Incorporated will focus on the provocative idea that co-pilots could remain on the ground, remotely assisting solo aviators on the flight deck during the busiest parts of flights. According to John Borghese, Rockwell's vice president of its Advanced Technology Center, whether the concept will eventually come to fruition depends on political viability and social acceptability, as well as technical feasibility. The researchers are not endorsing the idea or devising specific plans for single-pilot operation of large commercial jets. Rather, they seek to analyze changes in technology and operations that could make the cockpit or concept feasible in the future, even if that means as far off as 2030. Under the concept that the researchers are studying, aviators on the ground could be assigned to assist solo cockpit pilots on multiple flights, virtually co-piloting during the busiest times through crowded airspace, approach and landing maneuvers, or if something goes wrong. It's a reasonably new area to study how the notion may apply to large jets. Let's see. When pilots need a mid-air rest or a bathroom break, those on the ground even may need to babysit the vehicle, he said. Such a dramatic shift won't happen anytime soon, and there is virtual consensus that reduced crews for passenger planes won't be considered until they are introduced first in the cargo arena. That is unlikely to gain traction much before the end of the next decade, according to experts and airline officials. This is not an incremental change, says David Woods, a professor of cognitive systems and resilience engineering at Ohio State University. Reducing crews goes beyond bolting on technology and further automating flight decks, he stressed. This is a major step change. It has big implications for how we train pilots. Professor Woods said, as flying becomes more automated, transitioning from routine flying to dealing with potential emergencies in the air and on the ground becomes increasingly difficult. Experts say these challenges may be surmountable, but not without significantly rethinking current design principles. The worst-case scenario, a pilot incapacitation during stormy weather or mechanical failure, for instance, offers a daunting challenge. Yeah, I would say an insurmountable one myself. And finally, Mr. Borghese says, you need to have a very assured way of getting that aircraft down to the ground with no help from the pilot on board. He says, right now, I cannot imagine a harder problem. So thanks to Andy and John at the Wall Street Journal for that article. So that is enough of the news. It is now time for your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
All right, let's go over here to the feedback notebook and start with this from Stuart in England. He sent me a link to this article about a laser weapon has been tested now for 4 months by the U.S. Navy. It can blast drones out of the sky in seconds. The $40 million laser weapon was fully integrated into systems aboard the USS Ponce at the end of the summer, and new footage shows it blasting a drone out of the sky in just a couple of seconds. The video also shows the 30-kilowatt laser targeting a rocket-propelled grenade on a distant attack boat, causing it to detonate. Rear Admiral Matthew Clunder, head of the Office of Naval Research, said, "This is the first time in recorded history that a directed energy weapons system has ever deployed on anything. And we're not testing it anymore. This is operational. It's on a ship in the Persian Gulf. This isn't something we've got in a box we're saving for a special moment. They're using it every single day. The deployment comes after many countries developed long-range missiles which forced the U.S. Navy to operate further from their shores. The Navy laser lifts hopes for a more powerful 100 to 150 kilowatt system, able to deliver a jolt of energy that could destroy a multi-million-dollar missile. The more powerful laser is under development and expected to be deployed on a ship by 2017. Wow, we really are living in Star Wars, sci-fi age, aren't we? Okay, thank you, Stuart, for that.
Captain Jeff, this is Larry, the old geezer in Tulsa, Oklahoma. First of all, happy anniversary, flying for Acme. I understand it's been a few years now, so good job, keep it up.
Thank you.
Hope to see you in Tulsa one of these days.
Me too.
Question I have, I'm trying to catch up. I'm on episode 143, and you mentioned that your company now flies to the Bahamas, and you were able to look up the approach plate on your iPad. The implication I thought was that maybe your iPad only has approach plates for the airports that Acme flies into. I'm wondering if that was just a wrong assumption on my part. I kind of hoped that you might have everything, just in case a problem comes up over, someplace other than the big terminal. So that's the question. And again, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, and good day.
Thank you very much, Larry from Tulsa. And it wasn't you that was under the wrong assumption, it was me. I thought that the individual electronic flight bags, EFBs, were custom tailored for the particular airplane that you were flying, as mimicked, or as I thought would be mimicked the same way as our paper coverage. If you look at the paper manuals aboard our Acme Mad Dogs, the coverage that we have in the paper products only cover those airports that we fly to, and also some extra ones in there for alternates, and even a separate bag with charts and maps and such for even emergency situations. So anyway, I just thought that, and each fleet had its own tailored set of those paper charts, etc. So I guess made the false or wrong assumption that the electronic flight bag, the tablet that I have, would only have the airports in it for which I fly. But apparently, I did a little bit of I don't know the definitive answer on this, but I just, for the heck of it, started looking at some airports in Europe. I looked at some airports in Brazil, etc. Clearly, places that we don't fly the Mad Dog for Acme, and they were all there. So I don't know if every single aerodrome in the world is in there that has an instrument approach procedure, but at least all the ones that Acme flies, or to which Acme flies. And that's why I kind of made that comment, that offhand comment regarding Freeport, because I know that we probably had approach plates, instrument approach procedures, that sort of thing for Freeport in the alternate bag, or before we actually started flying in and serving Freeport. But I don't know what to say. I guess I made the false assumption. I guess there's a lot more crammed into the digital bits than I thought. So yeah, I have a lot of stuff in that EFB Surface to RT tablet than I realized. So yeah, it was not you making the false assumption, it was me. So thanks for your feedback, Larry, and I hope as well to meet you and share a coffee or beer or both sometime in Tulsa.
Hi Jeff, it's Joris from Belgium. I was listening to some old episodes, did some catching up, and in 138 I was listening to your story about the plane returning to Long Beach with the overheated engine problem. And in your show it was stated that the evacuation was not really ordered by the pilots, and it was kind of the idea of the flight attendants. But I think that's not really true. I did some research, and the pilot at some point made the announcement easy Victor, and that is some kind of code, as I understand, for the flight attendants to start the evacuation, but it's in code word, so that most of the passengers don't understand what's going on, and the flight attendants get the time to open the door and get the slides out and stuff like that, and then the flight attendants can call out the evacuation itself. If the pilot was starting the evacuation by just saying evacuate, it could be the case that there are like 50 or 100 passengers panicking to get out in front of the door before that the flight attendants have prepared the evacuation itself. So I think that is the case. I read somewhere that some airlines do have their own code words, but Easy Victory is in the US quite spread and common thing to use. I just wanted to let you know that, so thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And you're right, and as you'll see, since you're just catching up, that in further episodes you'll see me discussing this more, because I did make again a false assumption about the term Easy Victor. Now, at my airline, Easy Victor is used as a preparatory command, but it seems that at most airlines that use the term Easy Victor, that's actually the evacuation command, the active command. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe he did then call for the evacuation. That seemed kind of obvious, as you were stating there for us. And then I received this in episode 143. I talked about this from an anonymous listener who, I can't say who it is, but this person does have credibility, who was there during the incident. And he said, I wanted to comment, he or she, on the JetBlue Flight 1416 incident at Long Beach. I saw the whole incident happen. The right overwing slide was actually blown just prior to the aircraft actually stopping. The person who sat in the window must have gotten anxious, and they opened the door on their own without instruction, because the flight attendants had no idea that this had happened until the captain called for evacuation based on the tower controller's visual and comment, which you hear in the ATC recording. The aircraft was moved off the runway within 45 minutes, and the airport opened 1 hour after the plane touched down. I hope this sheds some light for all your listeners. Thanks, and keep up the good work. Again, that was from an anonymous listener, and that was in episode 143. So it seems like, to the best we can determine here, that he had initially did not call for the evacuation, but when Tower said, "You people are evacuating," then he got on and said, easy, Victor," and that prompted and commanded the evacuation. So I hope that's not clear as mud, but that's the best I can do. Thank you, Horace, for sending in your feedback and your take, and you're right. You're absolutely right. And again, as you listen to the episodes as time goes on, you'll see that that's the final conclusion that I came to as well. Stuart in London says, or sent me this. He said, just in case you have not seen this yet, it's literally breaking news here in the UK. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it looks like all London airspace was closed amid a computer failure. And I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but I included that in my notes for this show. So apparently some kind of computer glitch kind of caused a little havoc over the skies of London and their airspace. You know, I should probably call up and interview my friend Sean McCarney. He may have actually been working that day and might have some insight about that. And by the way, he is a fellow podcaster, Just a Catholic Dad, justacatholicdad.com. Great podcast. Jay Flitton sent me this. He said, I saw this story, couldn't help thinking how close it was to your story about the emotional support pig getting kicked off of a flight the other day. Though it sounds similar, tain't quite the same. This looks a lot funner. Take care. And then he gives me a link to a Harley Davidson takes a paragliding flight on grindtv.com. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to check that out as well. Obviously, the hog in this case was not a pig, but a Harley Davidson motorcycle, which some people call hogs. All right, more audio feedback.
Dear Captain Jeff, this is Private Pilot Arnaud from Paris. I'm recording from my car, so I hope the sound is not so bad. So here is my feedback and my question to you. Of course, I always love your show. This is a great show. I'm listening to your show every day to go at work. So every morning and every evening. So it's a very, very good show. So thank you very much for this. So here is my question. So basically, in the previous show, there was a comment as regard the Air France 447 crash, and one issue was the side stick, according to the comments made in the previous show, and both side sticks were not linked together, so the left co-pilot did not see the wrong input by the right co-pilot. So this was one of the reasons of the crash, basically. And so you said that in Boeing planes there is a yoke, and it is linked together, so this issue does not exist. By the way, I think Airbus decided to introduce a new generation of side stick, and they will be linked together in the future. I think starting from A380, if I am not wrong. So from the plane A350. Okay. Anyway, is it my question? To make it simple. In fact, do you know why in US, in general aviation and in airplane, so why you are using yoke? In fact, this is kind of strange, because in US, in Cessna, Mooney aircraft, Boeing airplanes, I think Cyrus, they are using yoke. And in France, in military aircraft, in Airbus, in general aviation, in France, and I think in Europe, we are using stick. And I think in Europe this comes from the military aircraft, because it's easier to pilot an airplane with a stick, with one hand on the stick and one hand on the throttle. Then it's very precise, especially when you flare the aircraft with one hand. You do not induce rolling while pitching up the nose, which may be not the case with when we are using an airplane with a yoke. Okay, so this kind of strange. This is my question. In fact, do you know why in US? I think from the beginning or very very early, aircraft manufacturers were using yoke instead of stick. So I did not make the research on Google. I am I am passing you this question. I am giving you this question to you if you can answer. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work. Bye.
Passing the buck to me, aren't you, Arnaud? Thank you for your feedback. And as you know, if you're listening right now, Arnaud, and everybody else, I talked about in the news section about that new active Inceptor side stick controller that Gulfstream is putting in the new 500 and 600 models. I did not read anywhere, and that may be true, Arnaud, that they are going to be putting active side sticks in future Airbus modern cockpits like the A350. That may or may not be true. I don't know. I didn't do the research on it myself either. I can tell you that there are airplanes, no matter where you are in the world, that either have a control yoke or a stick, whether it be a center stick or a side stick, and that's been true for throughout history. And even Airbus, by the way, before they came out with the Airbus 320, I believe the A320 was the first Airbus airplane that had a side stick. The Airbus 300, A300, and I think the 310, both had conventional control yokes installed in them. And conversely, you can look at many American-made airplanes, as you mentioned, the Cirrus, and some others, as well as military aircraft that use sticks, either a side stick like the F-16 or a center stick like on the C-17, which is a big military transport, the B-1 bomber, etc. And each has its advantages and disadvantages. I think, again, I'm not sure, I'm kind of surmising that perhaps the reason why you see control yokes in older airplanes is that before the age of fly-by-wire and power-assisted systems, that the moving the controls, which were tied to cables, etc., sometimes required a little extra effort. I know that having never flown the DC-8, but I know people who have. They said that airplane was like flying a Mack truck. I mean, it was just a brute. It was sheer strength, turning the control yoke and pulling back on it and pushing forward on it to activate the control surfaces. And you actually needed to have both hands on the control yoke in a lot of cases to actually fly the airplane manually. And so having two places, a place for each of your hands, was necessary. Now, in modern airplanes with control yokes, the amount of force required to control the airplane using the control yoke is maybe a little bit more than, it depends on the airplane, but it doesn't take a lot of extra effort. So when I'm flying the airplane, most of the time I have only one hand on the control yoke, usually my left hand, because I have my right hand on the throttles. My first officers are going to be the opposite. They're going to be mostly flying with their right hand on the control yoke and their left hand on the throttles. That's the way we take off. That's the way we land. And so, we're doing the same thing as if we were actually using a stick to control the airplane, whether it be a side stick or a center stick. So it's one of those design things, I think, overall. But again, the airplane that I fly, the Mad Dog, actually is, we like to say, fly by wire. Just the wire is a 3/8-inch stainless cable that actually travels all the way out to the control surfaces. And because of that, there are times when it's a very light feeling loading on the control yoke, and sometimes it takes a little bit more effort. And so that's the reason why McDonnell Douglas, I think, chose the control yoke. And of course, that was just their history as well. I think a lot of it has to do with that. But the control yoke versus side stick, etc. I think that the main advantage, especially in today's modern airplanes, of the control yoke is the fact that they are connected together, and that when one moves, the other moves. When the autopilot is flying, the control yoke uses, and it provides a visual cue as to what the autopilot system is doing to fly the airplane. And now it's exciting news to me that these active side stick controllers are starting to be looked at and installed in some cases in some corporate jets, and possibly, as you say, Arno, maybe even in the big transport category airplanes as well. And the argument for or against side stick controllers may be a moot point coming in the future. So thank you for your feedback, Arno. I do appreciate it. Jay again in near KHIF, Kilo Hotel India Foxtrot, Hill Air Force Base in the Salt Lake City area, sent me this. He said, some time ago there was a discussion about landing strips on highways in various countries. So whilst looking at some tactical pilotage charts of other countries, I noticed that there are some charted in the Korean Peninsula, South Korea, and North Korea. In fact, North Korea is lousy with these landing strips, so I took some time and circled all the landing strips I could find. I'm attaching the chart, which is the TPC G10B, and you can see for yourself just how many there are. It looks to me that most in South Korea are abandoned, whereas in the North are not listed as abandoned. I don't know if that's because they are unusable or there is so little communication between the U.S. and North Korea. A lot of communication lately with this whole movie scandal and Sony hacking and all that kind of stuff, but that's not aviation related, so I won't talk about that. So he sent me a file, a link to his Dropbox, and I'll see if I can get that in the show notes as well, so you can see the TPC chart that he included with all the landing strips, highway landing strips. So thank you, Jay, for taking the time to do that. Yeah, I think it's time for another musical interlude. And that is the U.S. Air Force Airmen of Note Jazz Band and their album launched in 2009, Cool Yule. COOLYULE. I'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to get that yourself and listen to more of that great music. This is from J.R. Pagia. He says, thanks so much for reading Roxanne's letter on your last episode. It was quite stunning and a good way to hear you read her letter as I was having coffee this morning. That has to be one of the greatest birthday gifts ever. That was very sweet of her and very kind of you. And yes, Roxanne is pronounced the same way as Roxanne. I do hope you don't get too much flack from the rest of the APG community I haven't heard any flack, so far so good, JR. Let's see. There they are, eagerly tuned in to listen to one of the finest aviation podcasts, and they hear a Casey Kasem-like long-distance dedication. Hey, what is this? What happened to the airline pilot guy? I've been meaning to send you feedback, but I'm a black belt procrastinator. Yeah, me too. About how so many things have changed in commercial aviation, and yet so many other things remain the same. Not sure if you've seen them before, but here are a couple of videos that illustrate the point, or that point. And then both of these are links to YouTube videos. The first one, this is like a proto-APG. He gets his feedback from the post office. The young people who can hear high-frequency sounds may not even know what a post office is. I think most people that listen to the show know what it is. And the second one, flying with Arthur Godfrey, perhaps the ultimate aviation geek of his day. He had off-screen personal issues, but looking at his old films revealed that he truly loved airplanes and flying. One thing that has changed, I hope, is the way he lights up a cigarette in the cockpit about the 21-minute mark. They were still climbing. He couldn't wait until cruise. Anyway, we all know that safety and reliability have progressed and made great strides, way beyond what they had during the Connie, Comet, 707, and DC-8 days. The one thing that has not, at least in the commercial airliner arena, is speed. Aircraft like the dearly departed Concorde never hit the mainstream. It's as if we never truly broke the sound barrier. With the required technology and fuel prices, it can be argued that the SST is not economically feasible. But are there other reasons? With more people traveling by air, surely there are more of those who want to get to their destinations faster, even more so than during the 70s and 80s when the Concorde was around. Even if I may not, and I need to say, people will correct me if I don't. It's not the Concorde, it's Concorde. Even if I may not be able to afford or accumulate enough frequent flyer miles for such a flight, it would be nice to know there's an option that can do LAX HKG, Los Angeles to Hong Kong, in under 8 hours, probably reaching or overreaching to expect SST to Manila or CEB. What was that? I'm sorry, the name of that one escapes me. What are your thoughts on why speed has seemed to have stagnated at less than Mach 1? I want to thank you again, wish you clear skies, tailwinds, and most of all, wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas. And again, that's J.R. Pagia. And so I think there are many reasons why supersonic flight hasn't really re-emerged yet, but I think that there are several projects out there now that are promising that we will see that again. And I think one of the pieces of feedback later here in the show, we'll talk about a new technology that promises to get anywhere in the entire globe in 4 hours, from any point to any point in 4 hours or less, which is pretty amazing. And that's even, I guess, hypersonic flight. It just wasn't economically feasible, and the need to cut the flying time in half or whatever just wasn't worth the economic burden, I guess, to continue to use that kind of technology. Again, though, I think that technology is advancing, and it's not so economically unfeasible, and we're going to see in our lifetimes supersonic flight again, and as I just said, possibly and perhaps probably hypersonic flight. So that's the best I can do. Thank you for your. Speaking of lighting up the cigarette, Arthur Godfrey. I remember one of my early flights at Acme. I was a flight engineer on the 727, and as we were taking off in the 727, as soon as the gear went up, I smelled smoke, and the captain, this old, he must have been either the number one on the seniority list guy or very close to it. But he, as soon as the gear went up into the well, he was sucking on a cigarette, which was very unusual. You just didn't see that. And really, that was the last time I ever saw that, honestly. Okay, thanks again for your feedback, JR. Stuart says, "Hi, Jeff. Just wanted to thank you for episode 147 and all your other episodes. I really do appreciate them and every week. Absolutely loving the inclusion of some jazz in 147. I've just been on iTunes and downloaded Airman of Note, Cool Yule." That's what we're listening to on this show, by the way. "I'm a keen jazz lover myself, yet have not heard of this band, so I have you to thank for that. I've also checked out that Streamlight Torch on Amazon, and I'm rather tempted." Stay tuned. There's somebody else that sent me feedback about flashlights. He said, "It would be useful in my role as a paramedic." I think they make one specifically for paramedics. You might want to check that out as well, Stuart. Anyway, I'd like to wish you and your family, including Cedric, of course, a Merry Christmas. Enjoy your annual leave and have a beer for me. Thankfully, I'm not working Christmas Day either, so I'll have a beer too. Great. As a small token of my appreciation for your podcast, I'm going to send you some more coffee via PayPal later on today. And he did. Thank you, Stuart. Again, airlinepilotguy.com/coffee if you want to send a donation there. Thank you for helping with that, Stuart. And Merry Christmas to you and your family as well. When I'm drinking my beer on Christmas Day, I'll be thinking about you, Stuart, and all of my APG listeners. And speaking of sipping a beer, Nick writes, "I just found an article that combines two of your favorite things, aviation and craft beer. You may just have to start flying with Delta instead of Acme." And then there's the link, which I'll have in the show notes, to the fact that Delta Airlines is introducing a bunch of craft beers, not on tap, unfortunately, even though the picture looks like a bunch of beer taps in the seat back, but bottled varieties of craft brews depending on the particular market. So, yeah, I guess maybe I'll have to start flying on Delta instead of Acme to get those nice craft beers. On another subject, we are all aware of the boneyards in the desert where aircraft are placed in storage or in many cases are dismantled. I know the desert climate is perfect for storage, but do you think there's a limit on how long an aircraft can stay in storage before being returned to passenger service? Hope you and your family have a wonderful Christmas time. Have you bought Cedric a present? What's this with Cedric? Nobody cares about me. Everybody cares about Cedric. Yeah, he's a good bird. No, I have not bought Cedric a present. Maybe I need to think about that. Put him on my list. Okay, wishing you a wonderful Christmas time as well, Nick. So the aircraft in the desert, as long as the airplanes are prepared properly, the inlets covered up and taped up and the various ports and holes in the fuselage and all that kind of stuff are protected, I think that these airplanes can last quite a long time in that dry desert air. And I think it's more of economic viability for operating the airplane than anything else. I think that, I don't know, you're right, there must be a time limit on how long an aircraft can stay in that long-term storage before they can, really effectively and efficiently return it to passenger service. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe somebody out there listening does, and they'll send me feedback. Thanks, Nick, for that. Rick, he says, "A shot of me peeking through the window yesterday while landing back in Miami. A good friend of mine happened to be by the side of the runway snapping away. After I landed, he called me to ask if it was me on the plane. He thought he saw my signature blue sunglasses. Sweet shot. Hope you're having a nice family Saturday with a Celebration IPA in hand." And I don't believe I was that day. I was still keeping myself available for last-minute flying, which I did actually that night. But I'll include the photo of Rick at the controls of the LAN Chile. I was going to call it an Airbus, the Boeing 777 freighter version, and we'll have a little bit more later about Rick talking about that. Let's see. Speaking of audio feedback, this is from Rana.
Hi, Captain Jeff. This is Rana. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say thank you for pronouncing my name correctly in the last podcast that I left feedback in. I appreciate it. My name is actually Iranian, and so I think it's a little bit difficult for people to pronounce the Iranian way, which is Rana. So it's a pretty tongue-rolling type of name, but it's just Rana, so thanks for pronouncing it correctly. Sometimes people say Renee, and I don't really get why. But anyway, I don't really have a question for this feedback, but I did want to give your attention to a really awesome documentary that's coming out in 2015 called Aviation, The Invisible Highway. It's narrated by Harrison Ford, and it just looks absolutely stunning from the trailers and looks very inspirational and epic and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be cool if you could maybe share the link with your listeners in case somebody hasn't heard of it and they can watch out for it when it gets released. So yeah, that's about it. Hope people get to watch it. It looks so good. I can't wait till it comes out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I've donated a little bit to your coffee fund for the month. Hopefully you can stay warm with that and, get yourself some coffee. And hope you're flying safe. I know it's a busy time for a lot of pilots, lots of people flying and lots of chaos and commotion going around. Just kind of what happens when the holidays come closer. Speaking of holidays, I bought myself a little present. I bought myself an iPhone 6 Plus, and that is what I'm using to record this audio feedback with.
Sounds great.
And I'm very, very happy with this purchase. It's a pretty awesome phone. So that's basically it. Stay safe. Hope that you have an awesome Christmas, and can't wait to hear the next podcast. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Well, thanks, Renee. Just kidding. Rana. I can't roll my R's very well. I don't know what's wrong with me. But thank you for your feedback, for telling us about your cool new toy, the 6 Plus. And it sounded great, by the way. And for talking about Aviation, The Invisible Highway. I'll have a link to this trailer in the show notes. I talked about this in a previous show. Film was shot in 18 countries across all 7 continents. And there are some... But, the thing about this trailer is it's just music and beautiful footage and text. And so you really have to watch it to really get the most from it. So I'll go ahead and stop playing it right now. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I found out that Miss Rana has a Etsy.com shop, and I think she has a couple of them actually, but she sells jewelry. Now, I'm not sure how you pronounce Daedra, Daedra jewelry. Anyway, it's Daedra jewelry. I'll have a link in the show notes so you can check it out. I mean, if you need a last-minute Christmas gift, perhaps. Very beautiful and unusual jewelry design, kind of with a sci-fi twist. And she has several different categories but it's a unique fantasy and Swarovski jewelry. And so if you are interested in checking it out, again, check out the link in the show notes and support Rana by buying some of this really, really beautiful jewelry. So thank you, Rana, for your feedback and your contribution, etc., etc., etc. And all right, that's enough of that. Let me get back over here, and let's see what this one is.
So, Dr. Kuthar-Polly, long flight?
20 hours.
Oh, that's rough.
Not at all. Did you know that when you fly transcontinental without your wife, you don't pray for the plane to crash?
Oh, that is a funny clip. That was from Dave in Toronto. He says, "Hey, Jeff, I think this clip is funny, and I think the listeners will enjoy it." And I think we did. You're right, Dave. And that's a great show, Big Bang Theory. And also Dave said, and staying along with this side stick controller and yoke theme. Let's say, he says, let's say that you are manually flying your plane and have it in a left-hand turn. So you have your yoke turned to the left. What would happen if your first officer decided to turn his yoke to the right at the same time as yours is turned to the left? Is it either one or the other that is active? If that's the case, then either one or the other is active. Where is the switch located that turns off and turns the other one on? What would happen if your first officer went bonkers and decided to ditch the plane? Is there a switch or a button on your side of the cockpit that would disable their controls? Strange questions, but just curious. And he says, thanks, Dave from Toronto. And you know what, Dave? Very good question. I think, it's easy for those of us who are pilots who have been doing this for many, many years to take it for granted that everybody understands how things like our control yokes work. And I shouldn't. I should always remind myself that people haven't been doing, airline flying for 26 years or military for over 7 or flying airplanes, period, for a great number of years. So the way these control yokes work, Dave, is that they're mechanically interconnected. On the Mad Dog, there are torque tubes underneath the floor of the cockpit that actually physically, mechanically link the control yoke. So the control yoke sitting in front of the first officer is mechanically connected to the yoke that's in front of me in my position. So when I turn or bank the aircraft to the left, his yoke will bank to the left. If I pull back on the control yoke, his will get closer to his stomach, his gut, and as mine does. If I push forward, the same thing. So everything that I'm doing with my control yoke, it happens to his or hers on the first officer's side. And now there are conditions and situations where you need to disconnect that mechanical connection, and I believe there's a certain force, and I think it's something like 50 pounds of force or something like that, will actually sever or break the torque tubes or the tubes that connect mechanically the controls. So it's possible to actually operate them separately, and each control yoke, in the case of the Mad Dog, have cables that are connected to controls on one side of the airplane or the other. And it's kind of a complicated system, actually. But just rest assured that if somebody goes bonkers, I'll just, counteract whatever it is that he's doing. Of course, if we are really struggling and we break that, whatever that force is, 50 pounds or whatever, and the controls become independent, don't really know what the answer is as far as who gets more control than the other. I'd just say that would be a bad situation. I'd probably be looking for something really heavy to grab onto and whack him or her in the head to incapacitate them. Maybe even grab that crash axe against the back cockpit wall and whatever, before he or her does the same to me. But that's the way these things work. So, but it's a good question, and maybe a question that a lot of people had, and yeah, so good stuff. Thank you. Let's see. How about another little piece of musical interlude by the Airmen of Note? Here comes Santa Claus.
Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. Doobie-doobie. Vixen and Blitzen and all his reindeer pulling on the reins. Doobie-doobie. Bells are ringing, children singing, all is merry and bright. Hang your stockings and say your prayers, 'cause Santa Claus comes tonight. Here comes Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane. He's got a bag that's filled with toys.
Okay, Father Corey writes, don't know if anyone has sent this to you, but I'm interested in your take on this article. And then he gives me a link. And the article is entitled, The Pilots of Instagram, Beautiful Views from the Cockpit, Violating Rules of the Air. And from the, website Quartz. And Father Corey continues, As a more tech-savvy pilot, do you think that the author of this article had the right to call out these pilots? He says, in my opinion, he seems to do it in a way that rats them out. Is the use of cameras and the like while flying against FAA regulations, as the author states, or is the article an overreaction to regulations that the author doesn't understand? If you feel so inclined to answer, what is your opinion on these regulations? God bless, Father Corey. Okay, well, it's kind of a can of worms, isn't it? And I'll have a link to this, if you haven't seen it yet, in the show notes about the pilots of Instagram. Now, many of you know, who have been listening to my show for some time, that I would really love to do a lot of things and tie them into this show, like, videos that some pilots do on YouTube, and audio and other still photos and that kind of thing. But it's kind of the best way that I can say this is that it's somewhat of a gray area, and perhaps it is my fault for not inquiring more in depth with my own airline as far as what the regulations really say, or what the airline's interpretation of them is or are. And I've just decided that I should just play it safe by not using an electronic device in the cockpit. Now, I did actually call and talk to an Acme chief pilot several months ago and said, hey, I heard about this story of a guy that flies for my airline that snapped a beautiful photo of the new Freedom Tower poking above a layer of fog or low clouds, which is the same thing, over Manhattan. And he stated, we shared this via social media, and he stated while sharing it in social media that he took this picture at like 6,000 feet or 4,000 feet. Well, he basically indicted himself because below 10,000 feet we have that sterile cockpit concept. And this caught the attention of the Federal Aviation Administration, who in turn talked to some of the folks at my airline and said, we have a problem with this. And I'm not sure of all the details and exactly what kind of punishment or whatever this person endured or received, but it really made me kind of feel like, wow, I really have to pay attention to what I am doing, what I am snapping, what I am posting on social media. And so I'm, in a way, Father Corey, I'm glad that this person published this article, because maybe now finally this is going to be something that's going to be discussed, and maybe I'm going to get some definitive guidance from my own company regarding what we can and we cannot do. And I think that Acme is a little bit more restrictive than other airlines, because basically our regulations say that no use, unless it's an authorized, specifically authorized device, any kind of electronic device may be used in the cockpit at any altitude. So, it's just so restrictive, and I understand why the regulators are trying to make, some restrictions regarding the use of smartphones, tablets, laptop computers, etc. Because really, when it comes down to is anything that's going to be distracting and distract you from your primary duty, which is flying the airplane, monitoring the automation systems, and the safety of flight. And I would argue that reading a newspaper or a magazine or a book, although not electronic, could be as distracting as the smartphone, tablet, laptop, computer device. And so, I hate to say it, but if you're going to ban any of those things, I think you need to ban all of them. The problem is that sometimes we're up there with these very, very long flights, and you just get completely bored stiff. I mean, you're sitting up there monitoring systems, talking on the radio and such, and if you don't have something to engage your brain, your brain kind of goes into this mode where it just doesn't, just completely shuts down. And I don't think that's good. I don't think that's safe, honestly. But the rules are the rules. The regulations are the regulations. Now, as far as this person who, did they have a bone to pick? It sounds to me like this person had some knowledge of the fact that there were some rules and regulations being breached when the pilots of Instagram were taking their snapshots and posting them on Instagram. I don't think it's dangerous myself, but until the rules are changed or delineated a little bit better, I'd say the safe thing is to not post. If you're taking pictures, don't post them on social media. And taking it one step further, just don't use your camera. Now, there is a this website or company or whatever, Quartz, did a follow-up article after this one came out, and apparently they received quite a bit of flack. This one is entitled, let me see, let me roll up to the top. Pilots have organized a ferocious, at times threatening response to Quartz's story about Instagrams in the sky. And Quartz's investigation of commercial airline pilots taking photos and videos of their flights provoked a furious response from the aviation community. Hundreds of pilots and their fans have been harassing the reporter who wrote the story with vitriolic comments and at times threats of violence. I'm not going to read these on this show because some of them are just downright, rated R or rated X. I think that any of these people who are putting these comments on social media should really think about what they're doing and what they're saying, and try to have some civility if possible. I don't think harassing the reporter and threatening violence to the reporter is the appropriate thing to do at all. I think it's sickening myself that some of you out there, some of my fellow aviators, are doing this kind of crap. It really makes me feel bad for my profession, for you to be putting some of these inane and vulgar comments out there. You're representing all of us, and you're giving us a bad name. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But some of these people have actually called the author Yanofsky his cell phone, and one person actually put his address in addition to his phone number on the web, and that is just so wrong. I can't tell you how strongly I feel about that. It's just not right. So I'll have links to the original Pilots of Instagram story, also the latest regarding the backlash that Quartz and the author of the story has received. Interestingly, they put a very informative kind of flow chart in one of their articles as well. Again, I'll have this in the show notes as well, about what the FAA's regulations are regarding personal devices in the cockpit. And they've contacted the FAA, and the FAA has said, yes, they've confirmed that the way that Quartz is interpreting the regulations is correct. And part of their thing says, if FAA regulations prohibit commercial pilots from using a personal wireless communications device or laptop computer for personal use while at their duty station on the flight deck while the aircraft is being operated. A personal wireless device may only be used if it is directly related to the operation of the aircraft or for emergency, safety-related, or employment-related communications in accordance with air carrier procedures. In general, wireless devices include but are not limited to devices such as cell phones, smartphones, personal digital assistants, tablets, e-readers, some gaming systems, iPods and MP3 players, as well as netbooks and notebook computers. The rule does not affect the person occupying the jump seat, unless the air carrier is more restrictive. The FAA takes safety complaints seriously, blah, 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 blah. So they put this little flow chart together. When can a pilot take a picture in the cockpit? According to FAA rules, it starts off by saying, what type of operation are you? And it has different lines or ways you can go in the chart. But if you're a commercial flight with passengers, it says then, are you in the jump seat? No. Okay. What type of camera are you using? And if you're using a smartphone or tablet, the FAA regulations state that this is a personal device and you are violating the FAA regulation. If you're using a digital camera, the question then goes to, or the flow chart goes to, does it have the ability to transmit data wirelessly? And it doesn't matter if those features are turned off. Does it have the ability to transmit data wirelessly? If it does, then you follow the line and it's a violation, FAA violation. And finally, if you're using a camera and it is a film camera, remember those? You may, as long as you're not in a critical phase of flight, below 10,000 feet, you may use this camera as long as it's not mounted. If it is mounted, it has to be an FAA-approved mounting device. But let's say you're holding the camera, you may snap away. So if you want to check out this flow chart from quartz.com, I'll put that in the show notes as well. So it's just really something that really needs to be cleared up. And we as pilots have an unusual perspective of the world that we fly in. We have a great view. Our office window is pretty amazing, and we want to share this with you, the people that can't have this office window that we have. And you've seen me share these kind of photos up at cruise altitude. But honestly, most of these photos are being captured by devices that have the ability to transmit wireless data. In other words, your iPhone, your Android phone, whatever. Even most of the digital SLRs out there have the capability of transmitting wireless data. And if that's the case, technically we're all violating the FAA regulations. So I think that something needs to be done here to, make it clearer to all of us. And again, as I'm hoping in this case that this has reached as much publicity as it has, that the individual airlines will now take the time to publish something definitive for its flying force, and then we'll know what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do, and then take it from there. So I guess I need to find a digital camera that has no capability of transmitting wirelessly any data. Then I'd be meeting as long as I wasn't doing it in a sterile cockpit environment, I would be okay with the FAA at least. However, as I said before, Acme goes even further and says any electronic device. So I know, what's the definition of an electronic device? Would that digital camera be an electronic device? I would say yeah. I mean, it has batteries. It's electronic. It's a device. I think even a lot of the film cameras have batteries in it, have motor transports, etc. So are those electronic devices? I don't know. Where do you stop? I don't know. So hopefully we'll be able to get some clear guidance on this and not violate, potentially be violating FAA rules in the air. And wow, that was more talking about this than I thought I was going to. And you can see I struggle with this because especially because I'm in social media, I do an internet podcast. You're listening to this over digital media, and I like to share things that I see and experience with you. But if it means threatening my career I can't do it. I just won't do it. So I would love to be able to do it. I honestly would. But until I am sure that I'm not violating any rules, I'm not going to be able to do it. So those of you out there who keep pestering me to start my own Instagram page, I guess I could still take pictures like when I'm outside the airplane or when the airplane's on the ground and, it's still at the gate, that kind of stuff. I can still do that. But, as soon as the airplane is pushed back and in the air and, it's going to be something that I'm going to risk if I take any video or photos. So I need to be careful. So that is what I have to say about that. Great question, Father Corey. Thank you for asking it.
Santa baby, slip a sable under the tree for me. Been an awful good girl, Santa baby.
Okay, this is from whom did I forget? Oh, Ken. Ken writes, still behind on episodes, hoping to gain ground soon. Not sure whether these are worth talking about. Use or not as you control for time, but wanted to make sure you saw these. And one is a link to a very cool picture of 24 C-130s on a ramp or a runway somewhere. I forgot where. Here, let me click on it. It's been a few days since I've looked at this. Dyess Air Force Base in Texas in an elephant walk. There are 11 C-130H Hercules and 13 C-130J Super Hercules preparing to take off on December 6th, 2014 from Dyess Air Force Base in support of the U.S. Air Force Weapons School's Joint Forcible Entry Exercise 14B. Great photo. You're right, Ken. Thank you. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And the other one that I was telling you about earlier, this article about an airplane that can take you anywhere in the world in 4 hours called Skylon. And let's see, a nice picture of this, or an artist rendering of this aerospace vehicle. And let's see, the craft is powered by a new kind of engine known as a Sabre engine. The Reaction Engines Limited, British aerospace firm, asserts that this engine will be capable of operating as a jet engine and a rocket engine. Amazingly, it will have the ability to power an aircraft at up to 5 times the speed of sound within the atmosphere, or could send a craft directly into Earth orbit at 25 times the speed of sound. And they said there are a number of tests have taken place so far which analyze the structural integrity and aerodynamic stability and have proved so far to be successful. So looks like there is some interest in some companies as well as governments in putting some financial power into exploring this kind of craft, and it's possible we might see not only supersonic flight, as I mentioned before, but perhaps hypersonic, or whatever they call this, anywhere from 5 times to 25 times the speed of sound. Wow. So that's interesting. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. Thank you, Ken, for sending me those. Alex writes, this is my first feedback, but I've been a long-time listener. I wanted to quickly react to Matty Fab's feedback in episode 147. I've been an A320, or A320 family, as we say, co-pilot for 6 years with U.S. Airways, flying out of Charlotte. Our airline is the largest operator of Airbus aircraft, with an almost all Airbus fleet in the U.S., at least until our merger is completed. And I would like to say that I have never seen any mistreatment from anyone, whether passengers, airport staff, or ATC, because of our choice of aircraft manufacturer. After all, airlines are businesses. Although they pay us for more money, I know what to do with. I think he's joking. And I'm sure Acme had very good reasons to go with Airbus and chose what was best for the airline. More generally, I think we're going to see more and more Airbus aircraft in our skies, as most major U.S. airlines, whether through mergers or recent orders, now operate them. For instance, the A321 has become the de facto replacement for the popular 757. As far as philosophy, I've never flown Boeing or McDonnell Douglas jets. I started on Embraer jets, but I understand your point about automation. I think eventually it all comes to pilot training and not losing touch of basic flying skills, something I insist on. For each automation-related incident, you could find a pilot error-related incident, but I'm pretty comfortable with the level of automation right now because I can manage it and fully understand each aspect of it, going back to the training again. And believe it or not, even Airbus aircraft don't actually fly themselves. Someone should let the media know. That's true. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, they do not. And I agree with everything you said there, man. Automation's great. You just got to understand what it's doing. You have to understand how it's working and what to do when it doesn't, and how to fly an airplane. Basic flying skills. Here, I believe, and back everything you said, Alex. Thanks for your perspective on that question. Talked about LED flashlights on my last show, and a couple have said that they're taking a look at that for themselves. And I got this from Sport Pilot Dave. He said, the new LED flashlights are amazing. The photo he sent is of a Nitecore, Nitecore P12 I was given by a friend. 900 lumens. And the one that I was talking about that I just got, my new toy, is a 600 lumen, which is extremely bright. Can't imagine what a 900 lumen would look like. And David goes on to say, also features a strobe and an SOS function, 4 levels of illumination, and a battery level indicator feature. Yeah, I think the one that I have, I finally figured out the programmable button on it where you can go into a low illumination mode or even a strobe mode. I carried a Streamlight in another lifetime, but these new LED lights are just hands down way better. Perhaps not as good as Truncheon, but age and experience makes that secondary use less important. And so, again, he sent me a photo of it. So check out, if you're looking for a new portable, small LED flashlight. This is a Nitecore, Nite. NITECORE.com. I'm sorry, I got a little frog in my throat. I need something to drink to relieve my dry throat. Let's keep forging on here. Tim Van Ram, he's the one that sent me the couple links to the Wright brothers anniversary of the famous history-making flight, December 17th, 1903. Thanks again, Tim. Mark Lebrowski sent a link to an article, Co-Pilots, A Thing of the Past. And let's see, I think I have that open on this page. Well, I thought I did. I guess I don't. It is a Flying Magazine article. Yes, flyingmagazine.com by author Stephen Pope, published just a couple of days ago. Stephen writes, a debate is percolating online about the risks of... Oh, come on. Now there's an ad I have to watch. I have to watch this video ad before I continue to the article. Well, I'm not going to do that. I don't have time for that on my show, and unfortunately I didn't have it ready to go, Mark Lebrowski. But I tell you what, Stephen Pope makes some good points about co-pilots, and it kind of ties in with the article that I had talked about earlier in this episode. I'll have a link to the flyingmag.com article, and you can read it yourself. Sorry, Mark, but I intended to discuss it, but I'm not going to wait and listen and watch a video before I can read the article. Doesn't that irritate you? These paywalls. I guess this is not really a paywall, but it's irritating nonetheless to me. I know. These people are providing a service for free, and you should probably look at their advertising because that's what's paying for everything. I get it. Okay, Josh Chambliss sent me some feedback, and let's hear what he has to say.
Hey, Captain Jeff, this is Josh in Nashville, Tennessee. Hope you're doing well, getting ready for a great holiday season here. I want to throw my thanks in the hat for the great podcast. It's always a pleasure, never disappoints. Keep up all the good work. Got a couple questions here. First, President Obama visited us in Nashville last week, and of course that brought Air Force One and TFRs and all kinds of interesting airspace controls. I was listening to air traffic control as the TFR was up, and as the president arrived and departed, obviously there was some holding for everybody to kind of stay out of the way. And I'm curious, do you put extra fuel on the plane if you see a TFR for VIP movement? There were a few aircraft that sounded like they were getting pretty close to having to divert, that they were going to go through their reserve fuel. And it's a nice day, so I assume that they weren't really planning to have to hold for any real length of time. But how does that work? If you see something, do you, as a captain, take on extra fuel? Would the airline give you extra fuel? Does it depend on, are you on the front side or the back side of the TFR? Just curious what your thoughts are on that and if it's even a consideration. And my second question, I've attached a clip from liveatc.net. This is a couple weeks ago. I found this that sounded like the JFK Tower in New York kind of lost their ability to transmit. And this raised a few questions in my mind. I've always kind of heard about aircraft that weren't able to communicate with the ground, but it seems like a much bigger problem if the ground can't communicate to aircraft. So I noticed that they were communicating on the guard frequency, and so the questions I have are, what's your protocol in the cockpit if you can't reach the ground, like in this situation? And then do you consistently monitor the guard frequency when you're in flight? Is that something you've always got on a second radio somewhere? Those are my questions for today. Thanks again for the great podcast. Really, really enjoy it. Very enlightening, very educational. Appreciate all the hard work and time you put into it. And I wish you and your family and all your listeners the very best this holiday season.
Well, thank you, Josh, for the great feedback again, and wishing you and your family a great holiday season. Merry Christmas. Before I play the live ATC clip, let me answer your first part, which is the terminal flight restrictions. I think that's what TFR stands for. Those temporary areas where they restrict flight, like when as your case, as your example noted, the president visiting Nashville, and then the FAA establishing a TFR, and yeah, we have to deal with that kind of thing in scheduled airline operations. In fact, I fly in and out of Atlanta all the time, and President Obama likes to make trips to Atlanta occasionally. And when that happens, the way it works as far as, in my company, when a flight is going to be operating into or out of an airport with a TFR established or some kind of VIP movement, the dispatchers are always on top of this kind of stuff. And they'll send, in your flight plan, they'll have a note, and there's a section there where the dispatcher can give you information such as, well, the reason why I picked this lower flight level is because the rides above that are horrible, and we decided that spending a little bit more on fuel is worth it because you're probably not going to be able to stand those higher altitudes, or this flight level was planned for economy based on the winds, whatever. Notes like that are helpful to communicate between the dispatcher and the pilot. And if there is a situation where there's going to be some kind of VIP movement or a TFR established, that's usually where you'll see it. And the dispatcher will say, hey, I added so many thousand pounds of contingency fuel for this. You may be delayed at your origin, or you may have to do some holding en route until the TFR is lifted or the VIP movement has ceased. And so that's usually not something I even have to worry about. I'll see that note in there. I'll note on the fuel planning document, which is part of our flight plan, what is given to me for the flight as far as fuel and holding fuel, alternate fuel, and contingency fuel. And that will be readily apparent to the captain at that point. So that's the way it works at Acme. Yes, we carry extra fuel for contingencies. Sometimes we'll carry extra fuel for forecasts that are not completely trusted, and they think that the dispatcher may think that based on their experience, although thunderstorms aren't forecast, that perhaps that could be a factor, so they may throw some contingency fuel on, some extra fuel, etc. And yeah, that's something that we have. And if for some reason I feel uncomfortable about operating a flight because I know something that perhaps the dispatcher doesn't, then I just call him up and say, hey, or her up, and say, hey, do you mind if, based on this, we add X amount of fuel as a contingency? And as I've mentioned many times before, at least at Acme, I've never had any pushback regarding that. So that's the way it works with us. Now, your second audio is from, excuse me, liveatc.net. I'll play a little bit. I'm not going to play the entire thing. It goes on for quite some time, but I'll play most of it. So here we go.
American 973 Heavy.
Yes, American 973 Heavy.
Yeah, I think we got this kind of mucked up. What frequency are we supposed to be on?
No, you're here, sir. There's just a lifeguard downfield now, but American 973 Heavy, Kennedy Tower, runway 31 left, line up and wait.
American 973 Heavy. Tower Delta 1428, visual 31 left.
Delta 1428, Kennedy Tower, to departure side of your arrival. You can slow the final approach speed, wind 300 at 12, runway 31 left, clear to land.
31 left, cleared to land. Understand you want us to slow to final approach speed now, Delta 1428.
PD 22, Kennedy Tower. PD 16, Kennedy Tower. PD 16, can you call me on 119.1? American 32, taxi via Victor and Bravo, monitor ground point 9.
Victor Bravo will do that.
5 November Whiskey, contact nearest departure tonight. American 973 Heavy, runway 31 left, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, 31 left, American 973 Heavy.
PD 16, call me on 119.1, please. 644 Heavy, caution with turbulence, 31 left, line point, traffic 9 miles per hour. LM 644 Heavy.
Okay, there's some
more. Delta 1428.
Delta 1428.
Yeah, I just want to confirm the landing clearance, and did you need final approach speed now?
Delta 1428, affirmative, and you are clear to land 31 left.
Clear to land 31 left, Delta 1428.
KLM 644 Heavy.
Go ahead, 644 Heavy.
KLM 644 Heavy, 31 left, line up and wait.
Line up and wait, 31 left, KLM 644 Heavy.
JetBlue 780, short final, just check clear to land.
JetBlue 780, 31 right, clear to land.
Thank you, sir.
KLM 644 Heavy, runway 31 left, clear for takeoff. KLM 644 Heavy, runway 31 left, clear for takeoff. American 973 Heavy, how do you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you, contact nearest departure.
On no departure, American 973 Heavy.
KLM 644 Heavy, Kennedy Tower. KLM 644 Heavy. This is KLM 644 Heavy, this is Kennedy Tower on guard. Please respond. Delta 1428, can you take a visual to the right side?
He's not hearing him either.
Delta 1428.
644 Heavy.
KLM 644 Heavy. Delta 1428.
Clearly they're having radio problems.
Tower KLM 644 Heavy on 19.1.
visual to the right touch. Delta 1428, this is Kennedy Tower on guard. Go around, fly runway heading, maintain 2000. Delta 1428, Kennedy Tower.
644.
21 left, turn right as soon as able.
1 left, KLM 644.
Right.
6. We're on a base right now to intercept the localizer for 3-1 right.
For now, just fly runway heading and maintain 2000. I have left 326 Kennedy Tower, do you read? American 326 Kennedy Tower. Delta 1428, turn left heading 260.
Left turn 260, Delta 1428.
American 326. Kennedy. 326 Kennedy Tower on guard. Delta 1428, continue left heading of 220.
Left turn 220, Delta 1428.
Kennedy Tower, Amico 416, final runway 31
Alright,
right.
divergent 10 kilo heavy, 328, turn left heading of 1.
Kennedy 16.
16 Kennedy Tower, how do you hear?
Kennedy 16.
Control 6, how do you hear?
Kennedy Towers, American 326 on the visual 3-1 right.
American 326 Kennedy Tower, how do you hear?
Loud and clear.
American 326, wind 290.15, gust 31, runway 31 right, clear to land.
Okay, I'll have a link to the entire audio of that if you want to listen to it. And but you get the gist. They were experiencing problems with one of their radio boxes up in the Kennedy Tower that day, and yeah, that's one of those things where communication is so important, especially in the terminal area, and especially during takeoff and landing operations. And the hard thing about this is that live ATC uses scanners, so that was audio recorded from several different frequencies, and it's not really clear exactly which frequency was being used at what point, but you could tell that there were times when the controller was issuing an instruction or a direction and there was no readback by the aircraft, and the aircraft was trying to contact tower, there was no response from him, etc., etc. So, and you'll also note that the term guard was used, and guard is a frequency, as Josh alluded to, that we monitor. We have at least two communication radio heads in the airplane, at least in the airplane that I fly, most airplanes that I've flown. And each communication radio also has like two different positions, like a little switch that you can put in the frequency, and then you can put in another frequency on the other side of it, and then you can just use like a little toggle switch to move between the two. So, for instance, if you're going to be taxiing out, you're going to be contacting ground control, and then you may on the other side of that same radio, you may have the tower frequency or the departure frequency, etc. So you can easily flip to the next frequency by just flipping the switch. Now, so that's on one radio, COM Radio 1. COM Radio 2 is the radio that we at Acme use for company communications and also for monitoring guard. Guard frequency is that frequency in the VHF range 121.5 that we monitor in cases like this, where we're having trouble with our number one comm radio, and air traffic control or somebody needs to contact us to let us know something of urgency, or let's say you're getting intercepted by F-16s or whatever. They're going to use guard frequency to communicate with you, and that is something that we are required to monitor at all times unless we're using that comm radio 2 for some other reason, like listening to an ATIS information frequency, or communicating with our company for whatever. But as soon as we were finished using it for something else other than guard, we were supposed to return it to the guard frequency 121.5. And that is a requirement. So yes, Josh, you were correct. And that's why in this case, unless they had forgotten to switch the comm radio to guard, they would have heard the Kennedy Tower controller transmitting on guard. Again, that's for safety, backup communications. But in this case, they talk about it later in this clip that they were experiencing some kind of technical difficulties with one of the radio boxes up in the tower. And we, other than using other frequencies and communicating with other airplanes and monitoring guard and using that as a backup, there are other protocols that we follow if we're in instrument meteorological conditions and we completely lose our own capability of communicating, and there are certain rules that you follow to as far as your path is concerned, as far as your altitude is concerned, etc. So there are procedures that we are all trained upon, and that's also accessible via emergency manuals, etc., to make sure that you're doing the right thing in the situation where all of a sudden you completely lose radio communications. And as a backup, earlier, in fact, one of the news stories in this episode, we talked about the Air India flight, the Airbus A380 landing at Leh, that they were having trouble with communications with tower, and the tower actually fired flares, either green flares or red flares, to indicate whether it was okay to land or not. And we have, believe it or not, in our air traffic control towers, they have installed these handheld lights that project a very, very strong beam of light, and they put on various filters to indicate whether it is okay to land, if it's not okay to land. So if we're coming in and the tower's lost communications and we have a visual with the control tower and we see a green steady light, that means, hey, you are cleared to land. And if you see a red light being shined at you, that means you are not cleared to land, and in that case you'd have to go around, go somewhere else, or do something different. So there are some nonverbal ways to communicate, but in most cases we have so many radios and so many communication alternatives that it's nearly impossible to be in a situation where you completely lose radio communications. So I hope that answered your questions, Josh. And again, Merry Christmas to you and your family. And let's see, can I squeeze in a couple more here? I think that my first officer is already down at the sports bar enjoying a beer without me, but that's okay. I'm going to keep forging on so we can finish up episode 148. Here's some audio feedback from Rick.
Hey, Captain Jeff, how are you? It's Rick from Miami. I was listening to episode 146, and Babash had a question for me about me flying the 777 freighter, and if that's by choice or how does that work? Well, yeah, basically it is by choice. I've been flying the 777 freighter now for almost 3 years. Before that, I flew passengers for almost 7 on the 767, and the reason why I changed over from the 760 to the 777 is that when I flew the 767 on the passenger fleet, the 767 does not have at least the passenger division does not have a Miami base. So when my boss came to me and asked me whether I was interested in flying 777s based out of Miami, I jumped at the opportunity for a number of reasons. One of them is, I am originally from Miami. I know the area. 2, my family's there. 3, the 777 is a great type rating to have. Not that the 767 is a bad type to have, but nowadays you can do a lot more with a 777 rating than you can with a 767 rating. Now, Babash, how the differences between flying passenger and cargo. You fly both. So, that flying passengers has got its ups and downs and pros and cons as flying cargo does. But we as pilots, and I'm sure I speak for everybody who is lucky enough to do what we do, we just love to fly no matter what it is. If we can be on a plane up there, we're happy. So yeah, that's my answer to your question. Thank you so much for your question, Babesh. And Captain Jeff, thanks for another great show. I'm on day one of a 4-day trip that'll take me down to Argentina today. We'll overnight there, and then we'll go to Santiago, Chile, and then back up through Lima to be back in Miami on the 20th for the holiday break. So looking forward to that. Thanks again, Captain Jeff, for a great show. Keep the great shows coming, and happy holidays to you and to all your loved ones. You too, Babesh. That's it from up here. Take care. God bless, and we'll talk to you soon.
Well, thank you, Rick, for, again, your great audio feedback, and Merry Christmas and happy holidays to you and your family. And thank you for answering Babesh's question to you about why you fly the freight instead of passenger. And I don't have any experience myself except for being in the Air Force flying freight. Yeah, you mentioned a lot of good points, so thanks for responding to that. And finally, Nick Carson writes, another year has arrived, and its gate, at its gate as flight 2014. Here, let me start over again. Another year has arrived, and it's at the gate as flight 2014. Soon it will be returning as flight 2015. At the controls is Captain Jeff Nielsen, who is a highly seasoned pilot with 26 years and about 17,000 hours at Acme Air. You may ask what he does. Well, drinking coffee made by his little helpers, of course. What does he do when he's not drinking coffee? Checking his sack of mail from all over the world and making sure he answers them all. With the de-icing fluid to the long lines for takeoff to the bustle of a timely arrival, Captain Nielsen will ever be known as the host of yet another year of APG. He will be wishing you all a happy holiday. Nick Carson. Thank you, Nick. That was nice. A nice way to end episode 148. And it is the 18th of December. Let's see, next week. What day is... Yeah, so next week is Christmas week. Christmas is on Thursday. Christmas Eve, Wednesday night, the 24th. Christmas Day, the 25th. And, I'm going to have to play that one by ear. Not sure if I'll be able to put out an episode this next week, but I'll certainly try. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure. I may not get enough feedback to really put out one anyway. So we'll have to just wait and see. But there will be an episode 149 and 150 and so on. So look forward to doing that for you and for myself. And if you're interested in learning more about the Airline Pilot Guy show, or even the Airline Pilot Guy, me, Captain Jeff, head over to airlinepilotguy.com. And there you'll find information about this show, the show notes for episode 148. You'll find out information about the Coffee Fund if you're so inclined. And we have a great community over there, the APG community, and the APG Connect, I believe we call it. Kind of like almost like a Facebook community over there on the APG site. You can register there and start groups. And again, as I said, in the future, Arash has great plans for a forum and other cool things happening at the website. So if you want to find out information about how to subscribe to this podcast via iTunes or any other device, again, all that information is over there at airlinepilotguy.com. And until we meet again, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless. Merry Christmas.
could they?